Hello, welcome to Endemic Times. Today we are discussing the extreme drug shortage that is happening here in the US and also other parts of the globe. From everything I have seen, the United States, Canada, UK, and the EU are all suffering from extreme drug shortages of basic medications, specifically amoxicillin. There has also been a general shortage of basics like kids' cough medicine, pain medications, as well as prescription medications for diabetics, for example. There's a lot here. I'm first going to cover the general overview and issues that are occurring and ultimately why this is happening. And then at the end, I will provide the very small amount of support and suggestions that I could find. If you or a loved one are sick and trying to figure out what's going on, hopefully this will help. So let's get into it. Since October 28th, amoxicillin has been on the FDA's list of drug shortages. Amoxicillin is used for treatments of secondary bacterial infections that can occur in the respiratory tract. With our current tripledemic that is occurring and the serious cases of RSV that is affecting children at higher and higher rates, having this level of shortage of this drug is honestly just kind of scary. We are now at the point where patients are having to ration pills and search multiple pharmacies to find things like over-the-counter pain medications and fever-reducing medications for kids. One woman's son, who was extremely sick, had to get his prescription changed, but then the pharmacy would not take their insurance and the alternative medication was too expensive. She was finally able to find another chain that had amoxicillin and took her insurance. Let's stop right there for a second and just think about the human effect this is having right now. This is a parent that is having to search multiple pharmacies while her child is suffering from a high fever and also trying to navigate the ridiculousness that is our insurance and drug prices here in the US. These are not the things that people should be dealing with when trying to find these normally easy to find and cheap drugs for their children. It's just another testament of how awful our healthcare system is here in the US. And this woman also said that she felt bad for complaining because she was lucky to find what she needed. She just wasn't used to the effort. She said it never used to be like this, saying that there used to be so many options, but now the security of knowing that she can go to the store to get the medicines they need is gone. You have every right to complain at this situation. Your kid is sick. You're probably trying to navigate work and time off on top of having a sick kid. These are the things that just make me so upset about this system. And she is not alone or wrong in her beliefs of how things did used to be easier. Pediatricians are saying that they cannot remember ever seeing so many kids this sick at the same time. And that's 2 years into a deadly pandemic. Kind of makes you wonder what changed. To add insult to injury, an official from the FDA decided to gaslight and say that there are not any manufacturing problems, so there's not anything that's slowing production down or causing these shortages. The FDA is not really acknowledging the level of shortage that is occurring right now, and that is partly because of lovely semantics. The agency considers a drug to be in shortage when the total supply of all versions of a commercially available product cannot meet the current demand, and an alternative manufacturer will not meet the current or projected demands. There is also this odd dynamic of the FDA requiring manufacturers to notify them if there is anything that would disrupt the manufacturing or supply of a drug, but they are not required to notify the FDA of increased demand. I mean, this is one of those times where I get judgy and I ask, what is the real purpose of the FDA? Because we're seeing too many instances where they are ineffective where it's needed, and then on the other hand, approving chemicals and additives to food and saying it's all great when a decade later science tells us, no, these things are bad. Way too much of this goes back to the ills of capitalism. The reason why there is not a huge backstock in a warehouse of these drugs to help ease this increased demand is because these drugs have a lower price point. So there is less incentive for manufacturers to invest in excess capacity. So because of our system of healthcare and big pharma and alphabet organizations like the FDA, we are just going to see more shortages and a lack of provisions for sick kids and people. I mean, come on, it doesn't have to be this way. One thing I was trying to find is what the Biden administration is going to do about all of this, and sadly, I couldn't find much. Even though since September there were 260 active drug shortages, the latest information I could find on the administration and its plans was from February of 2021, where Biden signed an executive order directing the security of the Department of Health and Human Services to identify and report risks in the supply chain for pharmaceuticals and their active ingredients and to make recommendations to address those risks. So, yeah. Add this to another thing that the Biden administration knows about but is putting their head in the sand, just waiting for the next election. I mean, I hate this system so much. So now let's look at the bigger picture because there is a lot here. One of the biggest issues as to why this is happening is the actual ingredients that go into many of these drugs and our dependence on countries like China and India to get these raw ingredients. China has basically created a monopoly on pharmaceutical ingredients and routine medications. And the US really hasn't even helped in that respect either, but it's another story for another day. And something I couldn't help but be a little weary of is just the increased COVID infections that are overtaking China as we speak. This is going to continue to affect the supply chain of these ingredients because of a lack of workers. This is going to have a serious effect that I don't even know if the extent of it can be fully seen right now. Shortages of these drugs are projected to be low for possibly the next year. So yeah, there's a lot to be concerned with because it's not just one drug that is being affected here. Augmentin is in short supply and that is used to treat ear infections, and albuterol to treat asthma is also at a shortage. A Tylenol shortage is impacting the care of children. Tamiflu, which is used for influenza treatments, as well as Ozempic, which is a diabetic medication, is now in short supply because of it being used for weight loss and cosmetic purposes. And earlier this month, the FDA issued a notice warning on the shortage of Adderall. This is putting doctors and patients in really precarious positions. Doctors are now having to use alternatives that may not even be optimal for their patients because of this shortage, which is projected to last for at least a year, if not more. One of the biggest things that I am seeing here is that we have what feels like a completely ineffective organization that gives us this guise of caring about the health of the nation, but either having their hands tied so as to not do anything or not caring enough to realize they need to change course. The FDA does not manufacture drugs or require companies to make a drug, make more of it, or change distribution. This is the FDA basically using semantics to give us all the finger and say, oh, we can't do this. It isn't part of what we do. So then I ask, what is the purpose of this organization other than another agency that countless tax dollars go to, but ultimately politicians and big pockets are screwing us all over? I mean, if I'm wrong or off base here, please let me know in the comments. I just can't help but feel like we continue to have these obstructions in our system that are meant to be there to make everything this way. The way of making money, 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 but not really doing the thing that they disguise themselves as doing. As mentioned earlier, this issue is not just affecting us here in the US, but in quite a few other areas of the globe, most dramatically in the UK. A serious outbreak of strep A that has actually killed 7 children, and in another report, that number increased to 16, is having a serious effect due to the lack of amoxicillin for treatment. The seriousness of strep A can lead to scarlet fever infection, which in previous years averaged 186, but 3 weeks ago, officials in the UK logged 851 cases. Strep A is considered rare, but there has been a significant increase in cases, as we can see here. Also, I recently saw a headline of strep A infections occurring more here in the US, so we may be just a couple weeks behind the UK when it comes to strep A and sadly, possibly scarlet fever. And just like here in the US, pharmacists are not able to keep up with the supply of these antibiotics and the corresponding demand. One UK pharmacist detailed his struggles providing a personal account of a young girl whose family had been traveling for miles between different pharmacies to get antibiotics, and she collapsed in front of him. He said, "I am not a paramedic. I can't emotionally deal with watching a child collapsing, not being able to breathe, and then being limp in my arms." Yeah. That is a level of trauma for him, for this poor girl, her family, that they should not be experiencing. And just like here in the US, UK officials are acting like this isn't an issue, saying that there is no supplier shortage of antibiotics, even though pharmacists are having to turn people away because they don't have supply. Some pharmacists are waking up daily at 4 a.m. to try and buy what they can online, but there is a serious lack of supply. And that lack of supply is jacking up the prices as well. Prices are now skyrocketing, such as penicillin that is now up to 15 pounds when it usually costs less than 2. Working 18 hours a day for 7 days a week to get supply is the exact opposite reality of what the officials are trying to say. It's ridiculous and also just cruel to be gaslighting people that are living this reality of a lack of supply of medications for sick kids and adults. These agencies need major overhauls because they are not doing what they should and only acting at the behest of their donors and the political narrative of the time. Now, if you're experiencing issues getting medications that you need, here are a few things that I was able to find. Please note that I am not a medical professional and this is not medical advice, and please feel free to check out the articles down in the description box below because it's going to have all of the specific details that they provide in those articles. But here's a quick summation of what you can do if you're having this issue. Look for generics. They're usually right next to the name brand items. And look for things like acetaminophen and ibuprofen if you're looking for fever reducers. You can also check for chewable tablets and also go online. They also say that if your child gets a fever, to be a little more selective on when you give that medication if the supply is running low. If they have a fever that's maybe 100 or 101, they might not necessarily need to be treated right away. Now, like I said, I'm not a medical professional, but I still find this advice really odd, and I can't imagine having a sick kid and trying to ration medication. Rite Aid pharmacists can also work with physicians to recommend alternatives, and you can also talk with pharmacists about over-the-counter options. Lastly, I won't go into too much detail, so if you want more information, please check out the article below. But there is a company called Kinsa that makes smart thermometers that is using the application data to track when the device turns on, and they are using that data to find clusters of where illnesses are and how much they might be increasing. So an interesting level of advancement when it comes to trying to project and see where outbreaks might be starting and using that data to work with agencies on improving supply and informing the public of outbreaks. Unfortunately, a lot of this does nothing about the current issues, which is a drastic shortage of too many basics that people need during this winter flu season, along with COVID and RSV. There's a lot going on, folks. If you or a loved one are sick, my heart goes out to you. Here's hoping that things will improve sooner than expected. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe, hit the bell, and also leave me a comment down below and let me know what you think about all of this, because there's a lot going on. Have you been experiencing any shortages? Feel free to let us know. And as always, remember to stay safe, take care, and be kind to each other.